In the grand palace of iron columns and blood-red banners, there were 3 rules. Never speak unless spoken to. Never look the queen in the eyes. Never ask why the servants left the royal bedchamber pale and shaking. The queen was beautiful, but she was not loved, she was owned. And in the eyes of the king, ownership was not enough. The wedding without a touch. She came from a rival kingdom. Her marriage, a peace treaty, not a union. At the wedding, her face was hidden under a golden veil. The people cheered. The bells rang. But the king never kissed her. That night, in the vast royal chamber filled with candles and perfume, he walked past her and said, "You are not my queen. You are my example." She did not speak because she understood one thing. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a prop. The first night of dirt, the queen waited each night for the king to come to her. He never did, until one evening, a servant girl was brought in, young, frightened, wearing the queen's perfume. The guards said nothing. The maid didn't resist, and the queen, she watched in silence as the girl was ordered to lie on the royal bed. And then the king entered. Not to touch the queen, not to touch the girl, but to watch them, lie beside her. He said to the queen, breathe the same air. Let her tremble beside you. The queen obeyed. And when it was over, the girl was dismissed. Tears in her eyes. Shame in every step. The queen wasn't touched, but she was violated all the same. The ritual begins from that night forward. It became a ritual. Sometimes 1 servant, sometimes 2. Male, female, it didn't matter. Young, old, clean, dirty, all were allowed on the royal bed. But only the queen lay at the center. Only she wore the crown. And only she was forbidden to speak. Each time the king sat in his gilded chair. Just watching, no lust, just control. Each time the servant would shiver beneath the silk sheets, unsure of what they were meant to do. And the queen. She would lie still, her skin cold, her soul colder. The bed became a stage. Whispers filled the palace. Some said the king wanted to humiliate her. Some said he wanted to punish her for being too pure, too royal. Some believed he was aroused, not by sex, but by corruption, by the slow breakdown of dignity. By watching a queen forced to share space with the invisible. And worst of all, she was made to look like she accepted it. The public saw the queen at ceremonies, smiling gently. Her robes were flawless, her posture regal, but no one saw the bruises beneath her pride. Bruises not from hands, but from shame that no one believed. The servants silenced the servants who entered the bedchamber, never spoke again. One became mute, another took their own life, a few were gifted gold and land. But none could look the queen in the eyes again, because they knew what had happened. Not a single night of passion, but 100 nights of humiliation. And they weren't victims, they were weapons. The queen's discipline, she never wept. In public, never screamed in the night, never begged him to stop. Because she understood the deeper cruelty. He didn't want her pain. He wanted her obedience without collapse, so she became stone. Still, silent. A body dressed in silk, a soul dressed in armor. She memorized the scent of each intruder. The shaking of their fingers, the fear in their eyes. She etched their faces into memory, because one day, those same faces would tremble for a different reason. The king's philosophy. The king believed that power was not taken through war. He believed true power was measured by how many people you could reduce to nothing, without ever raising your voice. He didn't want the queen to scream. He wanted her to become the silence he created, a walking statue of his control, a breathing reminder that even royalty could be touched by filth, and do nothing. The night, it went too far. One night, a former stable boy, barely grown, was sent into her chamber. He was dirty, shaking. Unsure why he had been summoned, he begged not to go. But the guards pushed him in. The queen was already lying there, eyes closed. The king, in his corner, whispered, "Lie beside her. Touch her crown. See if it feels like power." The boy wept as he obeyed. And for the first time, the queen opened her eyes. She looked directly at the king. Expressionless. But not powerless, because in that moment, she realized, she was not the one being watched. He was. No kingdom survives forever, and no king stays untouchable. What begins as control often ends as obsession, and obsession always rots the crown from the inside. The queen had learned this truth, not from books, not from ministers, but from the trembling bodies beside her in that bed, and the silence they carried when they left. She had been broken quietly. Now, she would rebuild louder than silence ever allowed. The rules no longer applied in the early days. No one dared speak her name above a whisper. Now, servants began bowing to her even when she didn't look their way. They noticed things. The king didn't. How her eyes lingered just a second longer on a guard's trembling hands. How she left folded messages between pillows. How she adjusted the bedsheets in subtle patterns. Like signals, something was changing. The queen was no longer waiting for orders. She was laying traps in silk. The queen who chose it began with small acts of defiance. She started requesting which servant would lie beside her. At first, the king laughed. Let her choose. It changes nothing. But it changed everything. She picked those who were broken. Those who had seen too much. Those who had nothing left to lose. And in whispers, during those long humiliating nights, she began to speak. Not about rebellion, not about escape. But about truth. This is not my shame, it's his. You and I, we are just the mirror he fears. One servant wept when she said it. Another kissed her hand. The king never noticed. He thought they trembled because of him. But they trembled because they had just heard the queen's voice, and it sounded like survival. The circle of dust, there, were secret meetings now. Late at night. In corners of the palace once forgotten. The laundry halls, the ash cellars, the old music room with broken harps. And who led them? Servants, not generals. Not knights, the same hands that once scrubbed floors and served wine. They no longer feared her. They followed her. And one by one, they began placing small offerings outside her chamber door. A broken coin, a wilted lily, a blood-stained rag, a folded napkin with 3 dots inked in red. Each offering meant something. A sign of readiness, a signal of loyalty, a vow. The king's rot. The king began to rot from within. He no longer trusted the guards. He accused ministers of treason. He interrogated the cooks. But not once did he suspect the queen. She smiled at him like always. Bowed when required. She said, nothing more than yes, my king. But in the silence, she ruled. And he became a king of shadows. Chasing ghosts in his own halls the final night of ritual. It was a cold night, the kind that made torches flicker strangely. The queen requested a servant, not just any, but one the king had personally flogged years ago. A man with a ruined eye and a limp. The king agreed. Amused, he thought it was the ultimate humiliation. But when the man entered, he didn't tremble, he bowed. Not to the king, to her. And then, as they lay beneath the sheets, the queen leaned close to his ear and whispered a single sentence. Tonight, we end this. A palace without a king, no one knows exactly how the king died. Some say it was poison slipped into his goblet by a trembling hand. Others say he collapsed during one of his nightly rituals, heart seizing in fear. But when dawn came, he was dead. And next to his body, placed carefully a velvet ribbon, the kind worn by palace servants, tied into the shape of a crown. A new order. The funeral was quiet. The queen wept. Once just enough. She wore black silk, not mourning white. She held no speeches, issued no decrees. She simply walked into the council chamber and took her seat at the head, and no one objected. Because the servants, the cooks, the bathers, the torchbearers, stood behind her silently. They didn't carry weapons. They didn't wear armor, but their eyes were the eyes of people who had survived and chosen their queen. Her first command, she entered the royal bedchamber one final time. The sheets were cleaned, the furniture scrubbed off. The scent of humiliation still lingered. She opened the drawer where the king kept his ritual scrolls and burned them. Then she opened the windows wide. Let the wind carry the ashes across the city. That night, she didn't sleep in the royal bed. She slept on a servant's cot. Not because she had to, but because she chose to. The throne that listened, years later. The kingdom remembered her not as the queen who was forced. They remembered her as the queen who listened, the queen who watched, the queen who